Hello and welcome to the Blessings in the Streets podcast. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and in studio with me today is a brother that had the pleasure of knowing a little bit over a year now. We had an opportunity to come alongside one another in a men's empowerment event, and this brother is truly phenomenal. He is a counselor, he's a phenomenal poet, a motivational speaker, author, qualified mental health professional, and most importantly, he's a man of God and just an all around good brother to know. And he's taking some time out of his very busy schedule to jump on with us this evening to share a little bit about his journey, his experiences of overcoming challenges and adversities in life in hopes of inspiring and encouraging others who are, of course, going through their various adversities and challenges. So without any further delay, ladies and gentlemen, it's my privilege and honor to introduce to you Mr. Hilton Young. Brother Hilton, thank you so much for being on the show with me today, man.
Oh man, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So before we get jumping into our segments for this evening, I do want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself a little bit to our listeners for today. Kind of give them a little taste of, who you are, where you're from, what you do. Who is Hilton Young that you'd like the people to know?
Well, Hilton Young, man. Well, I was born in New Orleans, Louisiana, and raised up in humble beginnings. My mom, she raised me and my sister until we were about 7 and 12, and she passed away from a blood clot in her lungs. So our grandmother raised us, um, and we lived in the 17th ward of New Orleans, Louisiana, and we call it Holly Grove. That's one part of the 17th ward. And so, you know, I mean, we had a regular childhood. We went outside, we played hide and go seek. We played football in the streets, and when the cars came, we get on the sideline until the sidewalk until the cars come. We had to ride our bikes on the sidewalk until we got big enough to ride our bikes in the streets. We had to come in when the street light came on, and just had a regular childhood thanks to my grandmother. And you know, that's pretty much it. I mean, who GF Soldier is now, I mean, or who Hilton Young is now. I'm a dad, I'm a husband, uh, I work. Um, that's pretty much it. I do poetry every now and then, at least I try. And yeah, that's pretty much. I just try to help people. I try to help people as best I can, particularly from a mental health perspective. And that's pretty much it. I'm in school now, working on my doctoral degree in advanced studies in human behavior. Um, and that's pretty much it, man. Um, Easygoing guy, open book, pretty much. Easy to talk to. That's pretty much it. I'm just a regular guy,
Hey,
not much
hey,
to say
no,
about me. Yeah.
well, I mean, I know you're saying you're a
Yeah.
regular guy, but
Yeah.
again, I've had pleasure of being around you, a few times. Again at the event that I spoke of earlier, and I'm gonna challenge you back and say you're not just a regular guy. You're I know you're a very humble brother, and nothing wrong with that. But I want my audience to know that this brother is very well rounded. Very gifted in his poetry arena, even though he says he dabbles in it every now and then. Well, whatever that little time that you dabble in it, you come strong, you bring it correctly, and a lot of passion, a lot of energy behind your poetry, brother. And and I've always enjoyed those moments when you shared that poetry and just again, just your spirit. You can feel that in your presence, and just letting us know that you are, as you said, an open book, kind of keep it real type of brother. Which as a man, we like to be around men like that. It's very easy to upon meeting you to immediately be fond of you as one brother to another brother, and just again, just the positive energy that you bring to the room. So I appreciate you sharing a little bit about yourself, and and again, it begins to start the crux of your journey, of who you are and what God is destined for you to be in the using of your gifts. So appreciate you sharing that. So,
Appreciate that.
and again, as with any journey, I'm a firm believer that, in order to people to really capture, the essence of one's journey, it is important that we, take the time to go back to the beginnings of that journey and see where a person comes up from and what their surroundings were like, what the family life was like, and things of that nature. Because it's, believe it or not, it tells a whole lot about, why a person's passion or their drive for their particular walk and purpose in life is what it is. Much of that oftentimes stems from how things were coming up, so you kind of dabbled into our first segment of the show, and one of the things, of course, that stood out immediately to me, of course, is that you may mention about your mom passing away clearly at a very early age and your grandmother stepping in. I'm curious to know, just in that moment, what was that initial um, you know shock, if you will, like for you, to lose your mom at such a young age. I know you spoke very highly of your grandmother kicking in, and clearly that seems like that worked out for you. But nevertheless, mom is mom, and so I'm just kind of curious to know how you and your siblings were able to accept that at such a young age. How were you able to process through that?
Well, my sister had more of a relationship with my mom than I did. I was 6 or 7 years old, so I didn't understand uh, the seriousness of what death was and losing her was about. So I was too young to really know what kind of effect it had on everybody. When I found out, um, everybody was sad at the time, and I remember my sister, she just lost it when my mom passed. Um, but I guess I just wasn't old enough or mature enough to know how um, how greatly it affect people when my mom was gone. Like my grandmother, it hit her so hard because that was her only child, and
Mm,
so she went through many many dark nights, many crying spells at night. Um, After my mom passed away. So I just didn't understand the depth or the severity of it and how severely it affected my grandmother. So the effect that it had on have on most people when they lose their significant others in any kind of way that most people have when they lose their significant other, I didn't have that at that time. Now I felt when my grandmother passed, I felt it then because she was more like my mom than my mom was because I lost my mom at such an early age. So my grandmother was my mom. I had the relationship with her that my sister had with my mom at the time. My sister was old enough to know she was 12 at the time my mom passed away. So so it didn't affect me as much. So me and my grandmother had a special bond, and she treated me as if I was her son, even though I still call her grandmother. I call we call her Mama. That's what we called her. And my grandfather, I called him Dad all the time. I never called him a grandfather title or anything. I called him Dad because my dad was never there for me. So, so that didn't affect me as much as it affected everybody else at that time. Um, but making that transition into my grandmother, she picked up where my mom left off. My grandmother was a huge disciplinarian. She was nurturing, but she had that authoritative slash authoritarian type
mm-hmm.
approach. Um, she was serious about it, and so she taught me a whole lot. My grandfather wasn't much of a disciplinarian, but he did put you to work. He make you cut the grass. He make you wash the cars. Uh, you know, and do stuff around the house. My
Yeah.
grandmother made sure I cleaned my room. Um, Made sure I did my homework, or got my lesson. My grandmother used to say, "Did you get your lesson?" But that meant, "Did you do your homework?" So my grandma was a country bumpkin. So, that was pretty much it. So she's like, "Did you get your lesson?" Yeah, I got my lesson. And so, um, but that was pretty much it. My childhood, you know, I didn't do that well in school though. I did do that well. I failed 3 times. I failed the first, the fifth, and the seventh grades at the time. And I realized that, my learning process was a little slower than most in the classroom. And so um went through a lot of teasing and bullying at the time when I was a kid, because I got kept back so many times. And kids can be cruel. Kids can be horrible. So I got teased a lot coming through elementary school, and even somewhat in high school, because at the end of my high school year, my senior year, I was too old to play football. So I played my freshman, sophomore, and junior year, and kind of had to deal with the adversity of teammates and peers at that time, making fun of me because I was too old to play football at the time. So, um, and my grandmother tried her best to um, make me do better. But when you have a particular learning style that's not conducive to a classroom setting, and you're slower, and you learn at a slower pace than normal people in a classroom setting does, it brings about a lot of misunderstanding, misdiagnosing, and it leads to a rougher childhood than most. Uh, and so parents and people of that time thought if they're much harder on you, they'll make you do better. But when you don't understand what the problem is, you're more harsh than you should be because you don't know any better. So, my grandmother did the best job raising me. She thought that being harder on me would make me do better, but it didn't. Also, my seventh grade teacher thought that being harder on me would make me do better as well, and it didn't work, and I failed miserably that year. And so I had to find out what my learning style was, and when I did, I did okay. I mean, I wasn't an A student at the time. When I graduated college, I had a 1.9 well, no, at the end of my senior year in college, I had a 1.9 GPA, but that's all you needed to play football. So I always had low grades. I never was an A student um, throughout high school, and even when I graduated from high school, I had to go to summer school in order to be promoted to college. So academically, I didn't do well, not nowhere near as well as I'm doing now, but I had to discover my learning style in order to figure that out. So, you know, I had a good childhood, but it was rough because my peers didn't make it. They didn't make it easy at all. So I mean, but pretty much had fun though. I mean, it wasn't a terrible childhood. It was just some bumps in the road with my peers, but eventually I got things together. It just took me a while. So
Gotcha, gotcha. And man, first of all, of course, I appreciate you sharing, that aspect of your life, your transparency in that. I think is very powerful, and this is why I like to have this part of the conversation because here you are talking about I failed 3 times. Coming up, between elementary and high school graduation, and even stepping out of high school, I'm barely stepping out, in terms of, still having to go to summer school. But yet, here we are at the top of the show, and you telling me I'm working on my doctorate.
yeah,
So
4.0.
yeah.
Yeah,
So it's like,
yeah,
how do you even, when you think about that, when somebody's listening to that and saying, okay, this brother failed 3 times, but yet he's pursuing his doctorate degree, and as you just stated, I have a 4.0 GPA.
yeah,
How does that happen? And in your story, you weren't even saying that you didn't do well in school because you weren't trying. You actually had, again, it was a learning style
yeah.
issue more so than it was you lacking the intelligence to perform well. And so I'm emphasizing that because I think it's so important for anybody that might be listening to our episode today is that, you know, you don't have to be, the straight A student masterful in school in order to be successful in life. That doesn't define who you are. Just imagine if you had accepted the fact that, oh, I got set back 3 times, that must mean I'm never going to be anything. What would you have possibly been able to accomplish had you embraced that mindset? But clearly, you refused to embrace that, and you made a decision that not only am I going to figure out what's the issue with my learning style, but then I'm going to go ahead and do what I know I'm capable of doing, which is, from an academic standpoint, obviously you're excelling at a high level, and then we're not even going to talk about, as I spoke about earlier about your poetry. Anybody who's had an opportunity to listen to your poetry, and I know maybe our listeners may or may not, depend upon who tunes in, may or may not have heard it, but I'm here to tell you, to my listeners, I've heard this brother's poetry, and there's nothing Mickey Mouse rhymey about it. I mean, this is some deep intellectual type stuff. I mean, you just can't like come up with this. Just anybody. And I put it like this: anybody just can't do this. This brother is truly gifted. So just the poetry alone let me know where you stood intellectually, and I didn't even know until now about you being let back 3. I would have never believed that if somebody would have told me other than you. So I was like, so it's just amazing how again God can use our adversities and our challenges to transform us into something great, something that the world would have never predicted for you to be, especially, and we're going to go there, especially as a black man. That's what the world thinks that we're supposed to be in many cases. But then here you are defying the odds even after a rough start, and you did it, the right way. It wasn't like, hey, I came up because I was out here doing a bunch of legal stuff or anything like that. I still, again, fought the good fight and pushed through that adversity moment in terms of my academics. And again, here I am now pursuing my doctorate degree. Here I am now after you talked about the teasing that you got from your peers and everything. That could really mess with your head. So here
It
you
did for
were,
quite a while, and it did.
and you said, here you are telling us I was teased because I was the older kid. I mean, I've been let back and they're making fun of me, they're mocking me, they're teasing me. But yet, in the spirit of all of that and what you were encountering, here you are. Not only do you have the nerve to be pursuing a doctorate degree, but oh, by the way, he's a mental health professional.
Yeah.
How much preparation, how appropriate in the preparation that you had to go through to now be able to serve people who are also dealing with mental health issues. Again, I don't see that as a thing that was happened by accident. Sometimes God has to allow certain things to come into our lives and allow us to go through certain storms. We don't understand that in the moment, but you had to go through what you went through to be prepared for the walk that you're in right now, to be a mental health professional to somebody else. Who better to relate to me if I'm struggling up here, with my mental issues, than somebody who was right in the thick of it, all for a good portion of their childhood coming up. You can totally relate to that. And you're going to be able to connect with more people because they're going to see that authenticity in you, that transparency in you. So it's just going to be just evident in your energy, your empathetic side of you, your understanding of what that feels like. So again, not by accident at all. So appreciate you again sharing that, man. And that's such a powerful, and we just getting into this, and you're already hitting some PowerPoints in regards to just what you shared so far. So, as with any journey, man, as we get older, getting into our adulthood, we of course go through our series of challenges, like some of which you mentioned that you had at an early age. But even in adulthood, we go through our series of challenges. But every now and then, you're going to encounter those challenges, those storms, those moments of adversity that they hit a little different. Every now and then, we come across something that, when it comes before us, we're like, oh my God, this is a little bit more than what I'm accustomed to navigating my way through. I might be really good at working through challenging moments, but this right here, this particular situation like here, right here, hits different for me. I didn't know how I was going to get through it. This was a bit overwhelming for me. I didn't have an answer. This wasn't something I could write a check for or make a phone call on and make it go away. If you would, tell us about a time when you were faced with that type of situation where you weren't seeing a way out of it. You didn't know how you were going to come through it. You didn't know how you were going to overcome it. Again, you're here today, so we know that you clearly figured out a way to navigate your way through it. But if you would share with us a time when you were in that moment, kind of walk us through what that journey was like for you, and what ultimately was the turning point for you to begin again to see the light at the end at the tunnel, at the end of the tunnel, so to speak, and coming up out of that overwhelming adverse moment that you were up against.
Yeah, well, here's the deal with that because there's been so many uh, adverse moments in my life that I could come up with that I could talk about. But most of the adverse moments I went through, I always thought there was a way out of it, except for one. I went through Hurricane Katrina when I was in New Orleans, and that didn't that didn't set me back too much in terms of me finding a solution to it. Um, shoot, I had a pulmonary embolism just last June. The clot was about this big. It took up most of my chest. They never seen a clot that big before they had to take it out. I never thought that I didn't have a solution to get out of that one. But talking about my academic time when I was a kid, my seventh grade teacher, um, and I'm not gonna say her name, but my seventh grade teacher, we were taking a reading test, and I was failing miserably that year. And she handed our before she handed our test back, She read out all my answers to the class and made the class laugh at me.
Wow.
Now, she didn't say my name, but most of my classmates knew that I was failing the test and that she was talking about me. And she read out all my wrong answers in front of the class, and the class laughed and mocked at me. And I'm thinking to myself, at this age, shame on you for doing that. Now, of course, when she passed the test back, everybody was asking, Hilton, let me see your test, let me see your test. So they knew it was me. At that moment, I felt like, in terms of school, in terms of academically, I felt like there was absolutely no hope. I felt like school is just not for me. I'm a poor student and I'm never going to get this right. Um, and so after that, I repeated the class because she kept me back, and I had the same person, and I barely passed the second time because she did the same thing when I repeated the grade. Now she wasn't as bad as she was the year before, but that stuck with me for the rest of my life. And I tell that story even today. I'll be 50 in a couple of weeks, and she still is the number one person that I have to deal with in terms of making sure to remind myself that I'm better than what she said I was. So the turning point was this. I started writing poetry, and I realized that in writing poetry, I love to express myself through words. So I became a fan of reading the dictionary. And when I became a fan of reading the dictionary, my vocabulary increased. And as I wrote and I used big words to in my poems, I use that to not only project but also grab the attention of the audience as well. So as my vocabulary began to increase, people used to say, "Well, you're such a smart person because you use such big words." But I never felt that way. I never felt like I was a smart person, even though things in the poetry that I wrote was saying otherwise. So I went back to school after my 1.9 GPA that I had in college after my senior year. I went back to school in 2010 and graduated from Phoenix in 2012 with a 3.7 GPA. Never done it that much before, but I made my first A ever that I worked for. I did it when I was online at Phoenix, and that was the turnaround. My first
Mm.
A, my first class was a turnaround, and after that, once I knew that I could make an A, the light switched. And I didn't want to make anything less than an A after that. Anything less. When I made a B, I was hounding my teachers, emailing them like, you couldn't give me that extra point. Like, I was greedy in the sense that I didn't want to make anything less than an A,
Mm.
you know. And when I made a C in one class, and Lord, I thought I failed the class. And before that, C's were like an A to me. Like at least I passed. At least I was just okay with at least I passed. For some reason, I was always okay with getting a C or a D. At least I passed. At least I didn't get an F. When I made that A, my first class back in school, when I made that A online in Phoenix, I never wanted to make anything less than an A. And for the most part, I didn't. After I graduated in 2012, I went to get my master's at Lubbock Christian University with a 3.5 GPA, and I got my master's in counseling. So that was the big turnaround. And I have to continue to remind myself that I am better than how I was treated in the seventh grade. And I used all that as motivation just to let my seventh grade teacher know, look at me now,
Mm.
And she always made an example out of students, and she made an example out of me. And she used to use me as her example of failing somebody to other classes after I left that school. I had when I played semi pro ball. One of my teammates said, "Do you remember uh, Miss Such and Such from seventh grade?" I was like, "Yeah, I do remember." Like she failed me, and she was like, the dude was like, yeah, she failed me too. And she used to always mention your name. So every year she was mentioning my name to upcoming classes in her class to let them know the story of Hilton Young and how I failed him. And she used that as her motivation to try to get other students to do better. Now, I was like at least 6 or 7 years older than this guy, and he came back and told me what
Mm.
Miss So and so said. So, you know, I would love to show that woman today who I am today, but I don't, and that's the petty side of me. But the mature side of me that says, look, God brought you here. You don't need to throw that in anybody's face and all that other stuff. So there's a part of me that's real petty, and then there's a part of me that just want to throw it in her face, and there's a part of me and say, look, just be happy where you are right now. But even today, I cannot tell you how traumatic it is for a teacher to tell an innocent child how poorly he is in a classroom, because that can stick with you forever and ever and ever, particularly from a perspective, when you look at it from a neurological perspective, stuff like that stays on your brain for a long time. And that's post trauma. A lot of people have PTSD, but that post trauma and one of the symptoms of PTSD is having flashbacks. So I still have my flashbacks about what that lady did to me when I was in the seventh grade, and I'll be 50 on the 25th of this month. So the turning point lets me know that I could have made A's the whole time. The turning point let me know that, you know what, I learned at a slower pace, but I learned at my pace.
Mm.
And thank God for online schooling, because I was able to pace myself and learn at my own pace. And the term slow is not a bad term, but when you're in school and you got your peers teasing you and calling you slow, that's a very derogatory term in terms of how they're speaking it to you, how they're making fun of you. But that it's not a bad thing to be slow. It's not a bad thing to learn at a much slower pace, because once you learn it, you are just as smart, you're just as intelligent as the people who learn quicker than you. And so once I learned that, uh, I was okay, and I accepted who I was as learning at a slower pace. Sometimes I say I'm a slow learner, but more importantly, I correct myself and say I'm a gradual learner. I learn at a more
Mm.
gradual pace. And that's what I start telling myself. So I don't mind asking the stupid question now. No question is a stupid question. And I used to keep my mouth shut in classrooms because I didn't want to be, I was too embarrassed to ask a question, because it seemed like everybody else understood except for me. I was no longer scared to ask the stupid question. When everybody got it, I would say, you know what? I don't. I'm sorry if everybody else got it, but I don't. You're going to have to explain that to me again. So, with writing poetry and memorizing my poetry, I realized I learned in repetition, learned in repetition, learned in repetition over and over and over again. And when you look at the scripture says practice and cultivate and meditate, throw all of yourself into your gift so that your progress or profit will be made evident to everybody. That's First Timothy chapter 4, verse 15. And so that's what I begin to do. I begin to practice and cultivate, which means educate myself. And then I begin to give all of myself into the gift, meditate, study deeply, practicing, doing things habitually and repeatedly for the purpose of acquiring skill and proficiency. That's what practice means. So I cultivated, I continued to educate myself, I meditated, and then think deeply on the topic, and then I threw all of myself into it. And so my profit and my progress began to increase over a period of time, because I practiced until it became a skill. So when I memorized my poems, and I perform my poems, it's easy for me to remember, and it's even easy to me to engage in the audience and everything, because I practice, I put in the work. So, um, and I continue to do that till this day. And once I get it, I got it. And that would be that would be the message that I tell with most people. Don't give up. Continue to do it. Learn it at your pace. Don't learn it at anybody else's pace. Learn it at your own pace. Embrace your learning style. That's one thing I didn't do. I didn't embrace who I was, because I felt like it was embarrassing to be who I was. until I realized who I was is really who I needed to be in order to become successful. And trying to be somebody else and trying to be someone that you're not is going to set you back exponentially. It's going to set you so far back because you haven't embraced who you are, and people don't want to see another person in you. They want to see the authentic you. So they don't want to see another TD Jakes. They don't want to see another Bishop Noel Jones. They don't want to see, they want to see your authentic you. When you're trying to sound like somebody else, somebody's going to notice that. And it's, and they're not going to embrace you trying to be somebody else. So when I became authentically me and embraced everything about myself, my flaws and everything else, that's when I began to grow. So when I wrote my book, that was my testimony of how the gift exposed and saved my life. And so, uh, and so it was the gift that made me discover my learning style. It was my gift to be able to project and speak to an audience and memorize poems. And I realized that even when I was in the seventh grade, this woman made me memorize a poem. And I had the longest poem to memorize, and I spoke it in front of the whole school. But even at that time, I still didn't feel like I was smart. I still didn't feel like I was worthy. And even though she told me I did good at that time, she still found it in her mind to just embarrass me in front of the class whenever I did something wrong. Um, so I had to look back in my childhood and say, well, where did I get that from? And I remember when I did that Langston Hughes poem in my seventh grade year, and the whole school stood up on their feet. So I remember where I got that from. So I always had the gift, I just never knew it, and then I didn't have anybody around me to cultivate that gift. So it was a difficult time, but like you said before, everything that you go through, there's a purpose behind it. And if you
Mm.
don't discover the purpose of the things that you go through, you're going to continue to go through them things until you discover the purpose that that's needed for you to bring you out of those things. So that turning point uh, was huge for me. And till this day, I still use things from my past to motivate me to keep going, even today. So,
Wow, man. That is such a powerful, powerful story. And again, your transparency in that is so incredible. But it also highlights once again how, God's ways are not our ways, and how you, as you stated, the gift, the intelligence, the abilities, they were always there,
it was
even when you
always
were
there.
struggling in
Yeah.
school. But as you said, because you didn't have anybody around you to cultivate that, to pour into you, to help you acknowledge that, hey, this is here and you can really do it. What God does instead is he completely flips the script. He says, I'm going to allow someone to who shouldn't be doing this to basically humiliate you to the ultimate level of humiliation that one can take without just cracking, if you will. um I'm going to allow this person to do it, but again, it's not going to feel good, but I'm not allowing her to do it because I want you to suffer, or I want you to experience pain and to be down in yourself. This this exercise, if you will, is necessary in order for you to dig deep down within and understand what she's saying is not so. And I need to counter that with, having again, kind of that self-talk, if you will, and saying, okay, look, I'm tired of being told that I'm nothing. I'm tired of being told that I'm, incapable. I'm tired of being made to feel like I don't have what it takes to be successful. You reach that point in life, and it was later in years later, but you reach that point in life and say, enough is enough. And you say, even to this day, she's in her own way serves as a motivation for you to keep going. And then once you got a taste of, seeing that I am good enough, I am solid enough inside to accomplish great things. When you got that A for the first time, and you say, you know what, never again, I'm not going back. I'm not going back. And from now on, it's A or bust. And that's not to necessarily put pressure on you, to say that, if you didn't get another A again, or if you're not always getting A's, that makes you a bad student. It's just the point that you basically, the takeaway I want people to understand is that it wasn't about you getting straight A's moving forward, but making sure that I'm gonna give a straight A effort.
Yeah.
And if my straight A effort ends up with a B grade or even a C grade, I'm good with that, not because I'm just comfortable with passing, but because I'm comfortable in the fact that I gave my best. I gave my all, as you talked about, and you connected scripture with that. I put all of my heart, all of my mind, all of my soul, all of my effort into it. I threw my whole self, my whole being into my gift, and I left nothing to, I left nothing behind. I laid it all out on the table. So at the end of the day, regardless of the results, I can walk away knowing that I gave my best. I did my best.
Yeah.
And that's such a powerful lesson. It's a lesson that I oftentimes have with my daughter, because she here she is on the opposite end where she's traditionally done well in school,
Mhm.
traditionally made primarily A's. But then here she is now in her sophomore year, and for the first time experiencing a class or two that's challenging her a little different than what she's used to. And so, she's getting some grades that she's not accustomed to getting. And, it messes with you on the opposite end in your mindset because you're used to doing well all the time. And we've had to instill in her, like, look, you're not going to always be perfect. And just because you're not perfect doesn't mean that you can't ask for help. You need to open up your mouth and say, "Hey, I don't get this time. I'm okay with that." Like you said, and I know we use the term because it's commonly used. Be willing to ask the stupid questions. Don't be embarrassed that you're going to ask something and thinking that everybody else knows in the room but you. Because the truth of the matter is that most times the question that you quote unquote call the stupid question that you think only you have, most of the time
Yeah.
there's several other people in that room who had the
Absolutely.
same question.
Yep.
They were struggling with having the guts
Yep.
to ask the question,
Yep.
just as you used to struggle with
I
that.
have absolutely no shame in doing that now. I don't care. You can explain to me 20 times
Mhm.
and I may get it on the 21st time, but 20 times I'm going to say, if I don't understand it, 20 times I'm going to say, I don't understand it. That's
And
just,
nothing wrong with that.
no, it's nothing
Because when
wrong
you
with that at all. Um,
no, I mean, because when you
it's
think
better to
about
do
it,
that.
right? Because we go labeling a question as being a stupid question, but then you have to ask yourself, is the question stupid, or is it actually stupid for you to know that you don't know, but you don't
And,
want to
and
ask
go ask
because
it.
you don't want to look like you don't know, even though you don't know.
I'm gonna steal that one. I'm gonna steal that one from you right now. I'm gonna steal that from you. Next time I ask the stupid question, I'm gonna ask. I'm gonna do that because I know I'm gonna encounter somebody that's gonna
Right.
ask
It's
me some
like,
question. And I'm gonna say
yeah,
exactly what you just said.
yeah, yeah. You
Yep.
making it seem like my question is stupid, but who's the stupid one? You don't
Yep.
know either, but you're gonna sit here and pretend, in your own moment of pride, in your own moment of,
Yep.
I just wanna, I don't wanna look a certain way in front of people. So you're just gonna be basically quote unquote stupid and not ask the question, knowing good and well that if you get tested on it today, you're not gonna pass. You're not gonna get that answer right. If, whether we're talking about in a school setting or even, of course, you can advance it into a workplace setting. If you don't know the procedure and you're going to say, yeah, I got it. I got it. And then you may be dealing with some, dangerous equipment that one, false move and you could hurt yourself or somebody else. Or
Hmm.
if you're in a field where it's about, saving lives or something like that, and you're pretending that you know, and when you don't know,
Yeah.
how stupid is that? All
Yeah.
because, and again, because and much of it is again due to pride or due to shame or
I think
and
so.
all of
Yeah.
those things that
Yep.
God tells us, don't be that way. Don't be
Absolutely.
prideful. There's no shame in not knowing.
Hmm.
The shame should be in you not being man or woman enough to ask and admitting that, hey, I'm vulnerable. I don't know. I don't have all the answers to everything. And I don't
Right.
have to.
Right.
So powerful story,
Yeah.
man. I
Your
appreciate you
your
sharing it.
daughter, like for me, I wasn't as intellectually skilled as your daughter was. So my A's that I made was just totally based on effort, not because I had the intelligence or the smarts to be able to understand, but it's because I asked questions and I always asked for help. I was always emailing my professors. I don't understand this. I don't understand that. And they was willing to, you know, create extra moments where I can take care of this. They created extra credit work for me and all that stuff. I actually worked for my age, not because I was so incredibly smart. It was just because the effort was there. And one of the things I learned about college professors, if they see your effort, they'll give you the A, whether you know it or not. And I
Right.
got many A's based on my effort. So, um, and I got some B's too. But the thing is, was the effort. And when they saw the effort, I mean, that's how I graduated from Lubbock Christian University with my master's, because they were so impressed with my efforts. And so like more power to your daughter for just being that person who just get it and just go with it. Because I wish I had those smarts. You know what
But
I'm saying?
hey, while you say that, I wish I had those smarts. I'm also thinking, as I use my daughter as that example, I wish she
Hmm.
had your effort,
Right.
because sometimes when stuff comes too easy for us,
Hmm.
too natural for us,
Hmm.
the minute we get into a little moment of adversity or whatever, we
Hmm.
want to run from putting in the effort. So when we're having that conversation with her, we're saying your effort needs to step up in terms of, you might need to study more than what maybe have been accustomed to. You may need to ask those questions that you used to not have to always ask. You now need to ask them. And we're trying to prepare her not just for making it through high school, but we're thinking ahead when you get into college and in the workforce and things like that. You need to be able to vocalize, hey, I don't get it. I need some help. I need some guidance. It doesn't make you stupid. It doesn't mean that you're slow or dumb or any of the negative tone words that are used for that. It just, as you shared, it just means you learn different. Like the one class that she's even struggling in right now has had some challenges. It's really more about, you learn a certain way, and this teacher is teaching different than the
Different
way
way, yeah.
you learn. So now you got to figure out how that teacher is teaching so you can
Hmm.
master that process so you
Right.
can get it. I don't have any doubt that she doesn't have the ability to understand the material. It's just the way that it's been presented to her is
Right.
different than what you're accustomed to,
Right.
and different is going to happen.
Yep.
And you need to be okay with that. It's not going to always be laid out perfectly just for you the way you want it. That's just not how life is. So to being able to navigate and adjust and putting forth that effort is everything. It's a sign of discipline. It's a sign of commitment to the process. So I applaud you for that, man. And more of us need that. I can even say that for myself, because there was times when I struggled with that as a kid, in school. I did well in school for the most part, but when I did struggle, I oftentimes had challenges like my daughter did. 'Cause I don't want to ask because I don't want to look like I don't know. When of course I didn't know.
Yeah.
And then you feel silly when you get the grade and you're like, well, maybe if I would have asked, I might have done better on this test, or I might have done better on this assignment, but I let my pride get in the
Oh
way.
yeah.
So we
Yeah.
can't do that. And so I'm glad you pointed those things out, because it's so necessary of a lesson that we all need to embrace, whether we're in school or just dealing with the day-to-day life, of stuff that goes on. So appreciate that you're sharing that, man. So when you do find yourself, going through your challenges of life, again, whether there's some of the big stuff that we've discussed, or even if it's just some minor things, that minor annoyances, things that just happen and just in the course of just living life being life. Um, what is your routine? What is your regimen that you like to do that just kind of helps you kind of keep a level head, but at the same time, kind of work through whatever the challenge may be? Like I said, big or small. What do you like to do that helps you to successfully work your way through such moments?
Positive self talk is a powerful tool. The scripture says that the life is in the power of the tongue. But one of the things that we use in mental health, we call it positive self talk. One of the things we discovered about the brain is that whatever you tell the brain, or whatever you believe to be true about yourself, the brain will chemically reward that behavior, whether it's true, false, fact or fiction, accurate or not, right or wrong. It will chemically reward it. So you have to be careful of what you speak into yourself, and you got to be careful of what you tell yourself. So positive self talk is what I incorporate every single day, particularly in the times of adversity. So I've been diagnosed with major depressive disorder when I was 14, and I recently developed, after Katrina, uh, general anxiety disorder, generalized anxiety disorder. And so the symptoms of depression is sadness, loss of energy, loss of passion to do the things you once enjoyed doing. Um, it also affects you physically. It can cause heart attack, stroke, diabetes. Um, it can you can experience a decrease in your libido system. You can also age faster as well, so you could be 52 going on 82 if you're not careful. So this is some of the things they do: generalized anxiety disorder, excessive worry about everything, and so positive self talk, and some people call it cognitive restructuring, it retrains your brain to reward the positive self talk just as much as you speak negatively about yourself. So every day when I have a negative thought about myself, I replace those thoughts with positive thoughts. So you could call it cognitive restructuring, you could call it thought replacing, you could call it thought stopping. Those are some of the cognitive behavioral therapy techniques that we use in counseling sessions and things of that magnitude. But I use it on myself as well. And I was doing this before I got into the counseling field. I was doing this to myself because, I had to remind myself, look at what all of your accomplishments you accomplished. You are a smart guy. You know what I'm saying? Because sometimes I just, even today, I struggle with that. I don't think I'm that smart because of what I've been through. So when people give me that compliment of being intelligent and being smart, I want to quickly say I'm not as smart as you think I am. I just put some poetry together and used a couple of big words from the dictionary. Everybody has access to the dictionary. Don't make me smart. So I used to always self sabotage, which is one of the things that people with depression do. They sabotage themselves, and so it's a daily practice of working on that cognitive restructuring. I keep a journal every day. I make sure if I don't write it in my notebook, I'll email it to myself every day. Some positive thoughts, some positive quotes. I look for positive quotes every day online. Sometimes I'm on Pinterest looking for positive quotes. I come up with positive quotes on my own, and I'll post them on Facebook, or Instagram, or Twitter. Um, so those are things that I do on a daily basis. I write. Writing is one of my gifts as well, which is the reason why I'm pursuing my doctorate, because that's nothing but research and writing papers. Writing and researching and writing, then writing some more. So it plays to my strength and my thinking process. I'm a philosophical thinker, but I'm also a analytical thinker as well. So when I'm going for my PhD, which is a doctorate of philosophy, I get to use my philosophical thinking to my advantage as well. So I remind myself every day, you don't think like most don't think like you. Sometimes you can really tick people off by your thinking process, because I have a tendency to overthink as well. So I know that I'm a thinker. So I remind myself that I'm a thinker, remind myself that I am a philosophical thinker. I like to think intelligently. I like to have intelligent conversations. So I remind myself of who I am from a positive perspective and not allow the negatives about me to override or veto the positive thoughts about me. But it's a daily practice. And if you don't practice these things daily, and this is what I mean by, in terms of Paul telling Timothy to practice and cultivate, throw all of yourself into it. If you don't do a daily practice of these things, and I call it emotional hygiene, and your emotional hygiene or your psychological first aid is what I call it. Those things right there, you should do it just as much as you brush your teeth, just as much as you shower. Your emotional hygiene is just as important as your physical hygiene. You don't want to go to work stinking, but you don't want to be stinking emotionally as well, or have
Mm.
stinking thinking. A lot of people use that
Thinking,
term a
thinking.
lot as well, stinking thinking. So your emotional hygiene is just as important, or or dare I say, even more important than your physical hygiene. So as much as you brush your teeth, or much as you should brush your teeth, you should be engaging in emotional hygiene as well. So that's the one thing I do. I still work out. I like to lift weights. Uh, my cardio, I don't care much for, but I know I got to do it as well. But I like to lift weights. So I make sure if I don't make it to the gym, I do maybe 100 to 200 push-ups a day, just in sets of 50 or something like that, just to keep myself in shape. Um, But that's pretty much it. It's just that daily practice of positive self-talk, cognitive restructuring, thought replacing, thought stopping, and things of that magnitude. Because your thoughts can go all over the place, and if you're a thinker like I am, uh, you can really dig a deep hole for yourself in terms of negative thinking and irrational beliefs and things like that. And then that cognitive behavioral technique, you're trying to eliminate the irrational beliefs and the negative thoughts. So I do that on a daily basis.
Love that, man. I love that. And the thing that's sticking in my mind is the emotional hygiene.
Hmm.
Because we don't really think about that.
No, we don't.
And I know you paused to say this, but I think there's some truth to it that it's a fair argument to say that emotional hygiene is even more important than personal hygiene. Not to say that we want, ourselves or anybody else to not be physically clean, but if you really think about it, how many people every day get up to go to their job, to do their life things that they do. The clothes are clean, the hair is right, everything about them looks flawless.
Yes.
But emotionally, mentally,
Yep.
they are a wreck. They
Still
are
dirty.
just
Yep.
so filthy, just so
Yes, indeed.
dirty, just so stinking because of
Yes.
the negativity that's inside, that negative energy, that negative vibe. And so it's like they're appearing to the world as one way, but inside they all messed up. And
Yeah.
I
If
think to
we would, if we
myself,
would do
yeah,
that, if we neglect ourselves physically as much as we do emotionally, you wouldn't be able to bear the stench of
hmm
of the odor if we neglected ourselves physically like we do emotionally. I mean, we're so emotionally abandoning to ourselves that if it was physical, you'll leave a scent everywhere you doggone go. And I don't think people are aware of it. I know I wasn't. And
and,
so, and I make sure I tell that to my clients when, whenever we speak in session, like you really have to do a daily practice of it. Most people think it won't help. Well, like anything, it's not going to help if you don't continue to practice it and make it a lifestyle. It's not just something that you do and you take home because you're trying to better yourself in therapy. No, this is a daily practice. This is something that anybody should do, whether you come to session or not. And I recommend everybody has a therapist. Whether you have a therapist or not, these are things that you should do every single day. I mean, your doctor don't have to tell you to take a bath every day, but
right,
your therapist seems like your therapist have to tell you every single time, did you do this? Did you do that? Did you do this? Because we want immediate results. We want that instant gratification, and instant gratification is not a realistic thing to have. So long term gratification is what you want. You want that long term stability. What you want, and we don't look for long term. We look for right now. Most of us, in terms when we want that emotional fix, but nothing works. No, nothing ever works like that. And so I had to drill that into my clients and the people I care about. But sometimes the
yes.
people I care about, I have to tell them the same thing. I was like, "You're still not doing this. You're still not doing this." And I'm tired of you telling me that. I was like, well, I don't have to tell you to take a bath every day. So what do you mean? Like, so a lot of the times, and when people get tired of it, I back off, because not everybody want to hear it. Some people are okay. Um, some people are convinced that not being okay is a good thing, and it's okay not to be okay. But when you have accepted it as your daily lifestyle of not being okay, then it becomes a problem.
Right. And I totally
So,
agree with that.
yeah,
That's something that I profess all the time. It's like you're still a human being. So you're going to have your emotions, you're going to have your
yes,
moments, and that's okay. It's okay. As you said, it's okay to not be okay. It's just
hmm,
not okay to stay there.
right,
It's not okay to embrace not being okay as being hey, this is my norm. This is what I just do. I just walk around each and every day in life just not being okay. And I'm
yeah,
okay with that. No, that's not okay. That's a problem that
yeah.
needs
It's
to
an
be dealt
oxymoron.
with.
It's a comfortable inconvenience, is what I call it. It's so
hmm
oxymoronic, and it's a comfortable inconvenience. You put yourself in a prison, and you've confined yourself to it, and you have become comfortable there. And a lot
And
of
it's
people,
interesting.
yeah, Go ahead.
Yeah, that you said an emotional inconvenience. It's a emotional
Uncom-
inconvenience
it's a
or
comfortable
uncomfortable,
inconvenience.
a
A
comfortable
comfortable.
inconvenience. I'm sorry,
Yes.
a comfortable inconvenience. That's powerful. I actually have another word that's kind of similar to that I refer to as is being dramatized, and
Mm-hmm.
my defining of dramatized is I'm going through a situation, but there's a solution available for me to get through this thing, but because it requires me to step outside of my comfort zone to do it, I'm resistant. But and so I want to go around and as you talked about, I want to whine and moan and complain about this is not right and that's not right. Solution is right here, but I don't want to do it because it's not comfortable for me to do it. Not because it's illegal, not because it's going to hurt me, not because it's going to go against my moral fiber. It's just that's not what I'm used to. It ties into what I shared earlier about my daughter. She's dramatized when in some instances when you don't want to ask for help. You could get the help. They have free tutoring at your school. All you got to do is take advantage of that, ask
Yeah.
the questions, and the problem is fixed. Well,
Mm-hmm.
no, I don't want tutoring. That's for slow people. That's for people who don't understand what they're doing.
Yeah.
You don't understand what you're doing. Sounds like it's for you. So, but
Yeah.
people, we do that, whether you're a child or whether you're an adult.
Mm-hmm.
We have a habit of doing that at times when what is called for us to do requires us to step outside of our comfort zones. That's why, even if you take it to a spiritual level, that's why many of us are not walking in our purpose. It's
Right.
not that we don't know what that purpose is. It's not that we haven't received that message from God. It's just that God is wanting us to take a path that requires us to step outside of that comfort zone. And
Right.
but instead, we don't want. Not only do we not want to do that, but as you to your point, what you just said earlier about we want that instant gratification. We just want it
Yes.
to happen.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to go through the journey to get there.
No.
You know, because that journey might require us to have to go through some stuff, and we don't want to go through that. We just want it. We just want to ask for it. We just want to snap our fingers. We just want to blink twice, and it just happens. And that's just not how
Right.
life, navigates
No.
itself. So,
Not at
um,
all.
so that's very powerful stuff, man. I love the terminology. It makes total sense. And we're all at some point in time we get guilty of falling into that trap. Some of us more than others, but it's a dangerous place to be. We can't to our audience, we don't want to be emotionally funky. We don't want to neglect that emotional hygiene.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather your clothes be a little tattered, a little, not the name brands and all of that, but you be in a good place mentally and emotionally. I'd rather that part of you be
Right.
good,
Right.
because that's most important in the end.
Exactly.
So awesome, awesome. So if you had a chance, and you spoke about this a little bit earlier in our conversation, but if you had a chance to speak to the younger self, your younger self, thinking about all you went through, the tease and the being picked on, the ridicule, all of those things. If you had a chance to speak to yourself, that younger version of yourself, what you had to go through, or perhaps somebody who might listen to this and they're kind of going through a similar experience right now in life, whether it be for academic reasons or other reasons where they're just feeling inadequate. They don't feel like that they have any value, any worth, anything to offer to this world. They may even unfortunately be to the point to where they're actually considering, taking their lives as a result of this because they
Mm-hmm.
just feel just that insignificant. What words of encouragement would you have for somebody in that scenario to let them know that there's a better way, there's a better approach to taking where they feel right now to getting to where they need to be so that they can truly walk in their purpose and see the true value that they do have to offer this world?
Well, one of the things I know for sure, because when I felt like I wanted to take my life, it was because of the fact that other people's view of life and other people's view of me was more important than the view that I had for myself. So, because I engaged in other people's perspective on life and on how they saw me, I was striving to um, live a life that would be more pleasing to them so that they would like me better. And so I struggled with that low self esteem for a long time. And even today, I still struggle with it because I want to impress other people and I want other people to like me. I'm a people pleaser by nature, and it's very exhausting to be a people pleaser. So what I would tell my younger self that you have to get rid of the concept and get rid of the perception that you have to meet other people's approval in order for you to have a successful life.
Hmm.
That's what I would tell myself because I was always trying to impress people, to get people to like me. I wanted to be a people pleaser. But when people have made up their minds about how they see you, there's absolutely nothing you can do to change their perspective. They're going to always find something wrong with you, and they're going to always pick at you and any negative thing that you do or they see to try to tear you down, even when you're trying to build yourself up. There is absolutely nothing you can do to change how people see you, and there's absolutely nothing to do that will ever meet the approval that you're looking for from other people until you start approving things for yourself.
Hmm.
I wish I
Love
would have
that.
known that at a young age. So your depression, your anxiety, you wanting to take your life and not finding the purpose in your life is because at some point you feel like your purpose has to match what other people are doing in their lives. And because other people are so successful in their lives, it's depressing because you felt like you've made no progress.
Mhm.
So get rid of the distraction of people and start focusing on yourself and who you are as a person and how uniquely gifted you are without thinking you have to match other people's gifts, other people's talents, other people's successes and everything. And um become who you are authentically and accept who you are and build from there. Get a chance to know yourself. Stop trying to get a chance to know other people so that you can try to be like them.
Hmm.
Get a chance to know yourself so that you can be like you and start loving you. Because that's one of the things that happened to me. I was so into other people's uh lives that I wish I would have had a life like that. And I looked up this quote that I once had, um, and it's called "Shallow Winds versus Deep Winds," and it kind of just it just kind of blew my mind away. And when I realized what shallow winds was and what deep winds was, I realized that all of my accomplishments in life based on trying to please other people. And then so it doesn't matter what your accomplishments are. If you accomplish all those things because of other people and trying to meet their approval, all of it is shallow wins, regardless of how accomplishing it is. The deep wins is when you did this for yourself and you accomplished this for yourself without meeting an approval of anybody else. So it doesn't matter if I had a book out. It doesn't matter that I got a master's. It doesn't matter if I'm pursuing my doctorate degree. If I'm doing it for any other reason other than to what I want to accomplish, want to achieve, it's a shallow win. It
Mm.
only becomes a deep win when you know that within yourself you're doing this because this is what you want to do and not what other people want you to do. So I would say get rid of the perspective that you have to meet everybody else's approval except your own.
Love that, man. Love that. That's powerful because, like you said, I've been guilty as well, man, of the people pleasing syndrome,
Hmm.
and it's as you stated, it's exhausting, and you never really reach a good enough moment. There'll always be something that somebody is looking for you to do, to be, to act
Yes.
like. Um, so it's a never ending cycle. It's like, it's kind of like, working in sales. It's like the minute you reach a goal, then they move the bar and they keep moving the bar. There's never a
Yes.
good enough point. And you can do the same thing in that pleasing, that people pleasing mindset that you have. And,
Hmm.
and it's just so disappointing because you're, you're, um, you're making everybody else happy, if you will,
Hmm.
except you,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and that's the word I have for that is, when I use the term about being dramatized, this is what I refer to as being antagonized. It's
Mm.
almost like having people who are in essence bullying you, because that's
Yes.
really what it is.
Absolutely. That's
I'm
what it is.
bullying you into doing what I think you should do and have you think the way I think you should think. And the minute you try to counter that or push away from that, I'll maybe go as far as to make you feel guilty about it, or I
Hmm.
might not talk to you because you didn't do it the way I wanted you to do it. And that's just not right. And we can
Hmm.
easily fall victim to that if we allow ourselves to do so. And again, living miserable lives because
Hmm.
we're living it for other people
Hmm.
instead of living it for us. That, if anything, if you're going to live your life for somebody, if other than yourself, it better be God Himself,
Yes.
not man, not woman. At
Yes.
least you know that living it for God, He's going to direct you or down a right path. It's not going to be by Him just having you to do something just because He wants you to for no particular value or purpose in it. He's gonna tap into what's already in you to do what you're doing versus somebody just having a random opinion about what they think you should do. And again, that danger in that people pleasing goes back to what we just spoke about earlier about that emotional hygiene, how
Yes.
people look good, they look a certain way, they
Hmm.
live a certain lifestyle, and you have no idea the facade that many of them have put up
Hmm.
that you're striving to be like, when it really is not their, it's not even their reality, but they're placing that pressure on you, uh, in their own lives, basically living a false existence because that's
Yeah.
not their truth. That's not really what they're doing. They're people pleasing too, and they're
Yes.
trying to impart that on you, and you just following, just following suit. And
Absolutely.
it's just a bad space and place to be in. So that's so important that what you mentioned there about that people pleasing, and you got to do it for you. My stepdad used to refer to this as practicing a little healthy selfishness.
Hmm.
Where you just gotta, and it's okay. There is a healthy selfishness that you can impart where you do what makes you happy.
Hmm.
That it's okay for you to tell people no. you know,
Yes. Yeah.
because that's another part of that people pleasing is always being
Mm.
okay, okay, knowing you tired, knowing you busy, knowing you had other plans, but you still are taking on stuff that no, no, I
Yeah.
can't do that this time. No, I'm sorry, you had to get somebody
Yeah.
else. Or no, I can't be there. No, and
Yeah.
doing it unapologetically,
Yes.
with no guilt, no,
Yeah.
uh, no,
Yeah.
I'm
It's
not gonna be
called
able to make
self
it.
care. I mean, you can say
Yeah,
it's a healthy
yeah,
selfishness, but at the end of the day, it's self care.
yeah,
And
yeah.
sometimes self care is saying no.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So that's again just a powerful reminder for us, and I love that message, whether it's to your younger self or again, there are many men and women right now who are in that
Hmm.
zone and they needed to hear what you just said, it's my prayer that they embrace it and take hold of it and apply it immediately. That is something that you can have some instant results with if you apply that right now and just start making it a part of who you are and just how you operate in terms of your way of life. So I love that, man. Love it. So my brother Hilton, before I let you go, man, again, this has been a powerful time. I've thoroughly enjoyed your journey and your sharing of your story, man. You would definitely drop some gems on us today. So I appreciate you for that. But before I let you go, as is customary here on the Blessings in the Streets podcast, man, we like to love on you. We like to celebrate you. We like to acknowledge you. So if you got anything exciting that's going on right now, any accolades, any achievements, or any works that you got coming up, whatever it is that you'd like to share, please do share that with us. Because again, we'd love to celebrate that. And if there's some things that's going on that people need to know about how to connect with you on, whether it's your counseling services or what have you, please share that as well. I'm interested in knowing what's on the horizon for you, my brother.
Yeah. I retired from poetry. What is this? 24. I earpiece fell out. I retired from poetry in a couple of years ago, and still officially retired. I made my international debut in poetry in 2012. That was 12 years ago at Trinidad and Tobago. And even though most of my followers know that I'm still in retired mode, uh, the guy who hosted me the last time I went there 12 years ago just called me last week and invited me out there to do some poetry again in June.
Wow.
So it just lets you know the effect that you have on people when you present any gift that comes from God, and when you present it to people in an effective manner, how still effective you are even in retirement. That someone from 12 years ago will call you back out to render God's word again. And so even though I have retired, I still have not said no to God's gift and God's assignment on my life. It's just that I do it more under the radar now. So when I retired from poetry, I retired from the spotlight. I retired from the part from the business part of it, because sometimes you can get caught up in utilizing God's gift for self glorification, self pride. And a lot of the times I allowed that stuff to get the best of me in terms of pride and ego. And so I took myself out of that. And so when I do it under the radar now, I don't really advertise it as much. I don't post flyers or anything like that, because I want to make sure that humility is still at the forefront of what I do. And we could get puffed up. We're human, we can beat our chest. We like it when we get the attention, the applause, the standing ovations, and all the other stuff. And I've got plenty of it, and spoken and spoken at huge arenas and huge crowds, open up for gospel greats like Tasha Cobbs and Ty Tribbett, things like that. But at the same time, when you're getting a little bit too much of yourself, and you're smelling yourself, like the title of one of my poems, "Stop Smelling Yourself." When you start smelling yourself, you got to be humble enough to be able to know, what, you're going too far. Let's sit this to the side. And so it was nice to be able to get for him to reach out and invite me back up there. So I said yes, even in retirement. I said yes. I mean, I'd love to come back out there and bless the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So that's it. I mean, I'm still working. While I'm in between jobs now, I'm looking for another job because the company I'm at just closed. Will be closing on the 29th of this month. And but I'm blessed. And to have that type of effect on people 12 years later. And I've been doing the poetry thing for about 22 years now. This will be my 22nd year in poetry. Oh, well, no, my 23rd year into poetry now. And so I'm just blessed. I'm happy that uh, so that's a thing to celebrate. So
That's awesome, man. And actually, you've been doing poetry since the seventh grade.
well, yeah, well,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, actually, in the sixth grade, we had a poetry competition. I wrote my first poem about the school. The school I went to was Our Lady of Lords at the time, and I wrote a poem and I won the poetry contest. And then, of course, I memorized that poem that year. So yeah, I've been doing this since the seventh grade. It's just that I just did at the sixth grade, but I didn't start it back until I was 27, and I'll be 50 this year. So this will be my 23rd year. So I didn't start back doing it until 27, and you know, it's been a heck of a journey, man.
That's awesome, man. And even to that, what you just said, that's another thing to celebrate, man. You're about to hit the 50 mark, man. And
Yeah,
so I'm happy for that, and and wishing you in advance happy birthday coming
appreciate
up.
it.
50 is a big milestone, man. And welcome to the club.
Yeah,
I
I
got
didn't
there
think I
for
was gonna get here, especially with last year. I had that blood clot in my lung last year.
but
I
that
didn't
just
think I
lets you
was gonna
know.
make it. Yeah,
Hey, and I get that, but that just lets you know that God wasn't done with you yet, man. He still
yeah,
had work for you to do.
yeah.
So again, I'm thankful that he, once again showed his grace and mercy to allow you to get through that and be here for your family and continuing to use your gifts accordingly. And I'm still excited, not only for what you've done, but what they're still in store for you to do, man. I see big things on the horizon for you, and I'm just
Man,
gonna trust and believe that you'll continue to allow God to use you accordingly, man, to be a blessing to others, man. It's just you're good. You're a good brother, man, doing a lot of great things, and it's just awesome to hear your story and your journey. And I know I've been blessed this evening in doing so, and I know my listeners who tune into this episode are going to be blessed as well. What a powerful story, and I
man.
appreciate you taking that time out, man, to share it with us in
Oh
such an
man,
authentic and transparent manner. So
it's my
thank you
pleasure.
so
I
much.
appreciate you having me.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And for my listeners who's tuning in to our episode for today, if you've enjoyed, the content that has been shared, the stories that have been shared, please subscribe, please share, please like, please comment. Because again, here at the Blessings in the Streets podcast, this is what it's all about. We want to encourage, we want to inspire, we want to uplift, we want to be transparent in the sharing of our stories with the hopes that what we have to share will resonate with you in some type of way, that you'll be able to take some little gems, some nuggets here and there that apply to your life and be able to use those to overcome those challenging and adverse moments in life. We understand that they can get overwhelming sometimes, and you might feel like you want to give up, but we serve a God who is big enough to handle any challenge, any adversity, anything that comes your way. There's no problem too big for him. And that's why it's so important to have that relationship with him and have him at the head of your life. Not telling you something that we heard, telling you something that we know firsthand. Hilton's story alone let you know that God is able. And I can share stories as well as many of the others who've come on the show and sharing their stories. So he's God all by himself, and he's all powerful, all knowing, and just a wonderful source to have in your life. And so I encourage you, if you don't have that relationship, that's something you want to get on top of today, and it'll be the best decision that you ever make in life. So remember, again, here at the Blessings in the Streets podcast, this is the place where your story is your glory, where your relationships are relevant, and where your journey is your joy. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts. Thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, keep fighting that good fight, keep persevering, keep pushing through. Don't give up, regardless of what the circumstances look like. We all go through storms. It's something that's just a part of life. But those storms don't define an ending for you. They actually are an opportunity. And that's what you want to look at the storms as. It's an opportunity to grow, to develop, to become the best versions of yourself, to be able to tap into that purpose that God has for you, to do the works that he would have for you, to be a blessing, not only for yourself, but be more importantly, to be a blessing to others. So until next time, you take care of yourselves, and I'll see you then. Good night.